small-town waitress hid a deadly secret until the vampire king appeared at her diner. The problem with eternity, Marielle, isn't the time. It's the repetition. The same rain, the same coffee, the same mistakes. Philomena Frosthall wiped the counter with a rag that had seen better decades, her knuckles swollen with arthritis and secrets. Outside, the wind howled against the glass of the midnight griddle, a lonely beacon of neon blue in a town swallowed by the Pacific Northwest fog. "People change, Phil," Marielle replied softly, keeping her eyes on the napkin dispenser she was refilling. Her voice was steady, but her pulse hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Do they?" Philomena scoffed, looking toward the door. "Or do they just wear different masks?" The bell above the door didn't just ring, it tolled, a singular, heavy note that silenced the sizzling griddle. The storm outside held its breath. "Sometimes," Marielle whispered, touching the hidden knife strapped to her thigh beneath her apron. "The mask is the only thing keeping the world safe from them." The town of Blackwood Creek didn't appear on most digital maps. It was a glitch in the GPS, a shadow on the satellite imaging, a place you only found if you were profoundly lost or running from something that had legs faster than a car. Marielle Thornford had been running for 300 years, though she looked 24. She possessed a face that was easily forgotten, a defense mechanism she had cultivated over centuries. She wasn't immortal in the way the poets wrote about, frozen in porcelain perfection. She was a siphon, a genetic anomaly in the supernatural food chain, a void. She didn't drink blood. She absorbed kinetic energy, magic, and life force through touch. A curse that meant she had spent the last 3 years in this diner wearing thick, ugly cotton gloves, pretending to be a severe germaphobe. The diner smelled of stale bacon grease, lemon polish, and the damp, earthy scent of the surrounding pine forest. It was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. The only other patron was Harrison Veilhart, the town's deputy, who sat in the corner booth nursing a lukewarm black coffee. He watched Marielle with the desperate, puppy-dog eyes of a man in love with a ghost he couldn't quite touch. "Refill, Harrison?" Marielle asked, walking over with the pot. Her movements were fluid, too graceful for a waitress in orthopedic sneakers. She moved like water, displacing the air without disturbing it. "I'm good, Mary," Harrison said, straightening his uniform and adjusting his badge. He was a good man. Solid. Dependable. Too good. If he knew what she was, what she had done to the Coven of Marseilles in 1890 or the Warlocks of New York in 1920, he'd arrest her. Or shoot her. Probably shoot her, then apologize to her corpse. "You okay? You look tense. Shoulders are up to your ears." "Barometer's dropping," she lied smoothly, offering a tight smile. "Migraine weather. The pressure gets behind my eyes." She retreated behind the counter, just as the heavy oak door swung open again. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. It wasn't a sound. It was a physical change in pressure, like being at the bottom of the ocean. The air grew heavy, static-charged, tasting metallic, of ozone, old blood, and expensive cologne. A man stepped out of the rain and into the harsh, unforgiving fluorescent light. He was tall, wearing a charcoal wool coat that looked tailored in a century where tailors still mattered. The fabric absorbed the light rather than reflecting it. His hair was dark, swept back from a face that was severe, angular, and terrifyingly symmetrical. High cheekbones that could cut glass, lips that were a pale, bloodless line. But it was his stillness that gave him away to Marielle. Humans fidgeted. They shifted weight, blinked, breathed rhythmically. This man stood with the absolute, predatory immobility of a statue. Sebastian Fernwell. Marielle felt the blood drain from her face, pooling in her stomach like lead. Her gloved hands gripped the counter edge so hard the wood groaned. She knew the face from the wanted posters of the Underground Council, the vampire king of the eastern seaboard, the butcher of Prague. A creature so old that dust refused to settle on him out of respect. He shouldn't be here. He should be in a penthouse in London, surrounded by thralls and velvet, or in a crypt in Romania. Not in Blackwood Creek, standing on the cracked linoleum of a diner that served meatloaf specials on Tuesdays. Philomena froze, her rag hovering over a coffee stain. Even Harrison, oblivious to the supernatural, sat up straighter, his instinctual cop radar pinging wild warnings that he couldn't logically explain. Sebastian didn't scan the room. He didn't look at the menu board. His eyes, the color of a bruised plum, locked instantly onto Marielle. It was a physical impact, like a spotlight being turned on in a dark room. He walked to the counter. Each step was silent. He didn't displace the air. He seemed to cut through it. He took a seat on a stool 3 feet from her. "Coffee," he said. His voice was a baritone rumble that vibrated in the glass sugar jars. "Black. And tell me, ma chérie, why does a waitress in a town of lumberjacks wear gloves that cost more than this entire establishment?" Marielle gripped the coffee pot, fighting the urge to vault over the counter and run into the woods. She forced a smile, the same one she used when a customer complained about the fries being cold. "Severe dermatitis," she said flatly, her voice betraying none of her terror. "And the coffee is $2? Cash only for out-of-towners." Sebastian smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a baring of weapons. "I can hear your heart, Marielle," he said softly, leaning in. The scent of him hit her. Rainwater, single malt scotch, and the metallic tang of dried blood. "It's beating like a trapped bird against a cage. You know what I am." "I know you're blocking the register," she countered, pouring the coffee with a steady hand, though the stream wavered slightly at the end. "Are you going to order food, or just loom? We charge extra for looming." He watched the brown liquid swirl in the ceramic mug, mesmerizing in its mundanity. "I'm looking for something lost, something that was stolen from my archives in 1945. A ledger, bound in human skin. I was told the thief settled in these woods." Marielle's heart skipped. Not a metaphor, a physical stop. She knew the ledger. She had burned it 10 years ago. It contained the names of every siphon born in the last millennium. "I think you have the wrong town, mister." "Fernwell," he supplied. "Sebastian Fernwell. And I never have the wrong town. The question is, are you the thief, or are you just the poor soul hiding her?" As Sebastian picked up the mug, his fingers brushed the ceramic handle. It didn't just break, it aged. The handle cracked, turned to dust, and crumbled in his grip. He looked at his hand, genuinely confused, a flicker of fear crossing his immortal features. "Curious," he murmured, rubbing the dust between his thumb and forefinger. "My decay. It's accelerating here." The shattered mug lay in pieces on the counter. Coffee dripped onto the linoleum, a dark Rorschach test spreading toward Sebastian's polished boots. "I'll get a rag," Marielle said, her voice tight, seizing the excuse to move away from him. "Don't bother," Sebastian murmured. He waved a hand, a gesture of casual arrogance, and the liquid evaporated into a hiss of steam, leaving only a dry, dark stain on the floor. Harrison stood up from his booth, his hand resting instinctively on his holster. The steam had been the final straw for his logic. "Everything okay over there, Mari?" "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the counter." "Sit down, deputy," Sebastian said, without looking back. The command was laced with glamour, a vampire's hypnotic compulsion. It rolled off him in a visible shimmer, a heat haze that washed over the diner. Harrison blinked, his eyes glazing over. His posture slumped. "Right. Yeah, everything is fine. Just spilled coffee." He sat back down, staring blankly at the wood grain of the table. Philomena, however, didn't blink. She reached under the counter and pulled out a sawed-off shotgun, leveling it at Sebastian's chest with the steadiness of a woman who had killed monsters before. The barrel was etched with runes. "We don't do magic tricks in here, leech," Philomena growled, "and we don't serve your kind." Sebastian looked at the shotgun, then at the old woman, amusement dancing in his plum-coloured eyes. Iron shot, a classic, but rude and entirely ineffective against a king. "Phil, put it down," Marielle said sharply. She knew Philomena was tough. She was a retired hedge witch who had trained Marielle in control. But Sebastian Fernwell could decapitate them both before Philomena pulled the trigger. "He's the king of the East, Mari," Philomena hissed, keeping the barrel steady. "He doesn't come for coffee. He comes for tithes. He burns villages." "I came," Sebastian corrected, turning his stool to face them fully, ignoring the weapon pointed at his heart, "because I am dying." The silence that followed was absolute. It sucked the air out of the room. Marielle studied him closer. Now that the initial shock was fading, she saw it. The subtle grey veins spider-webbing up his neck, usually hidden by the collar. The way his hand trembled slightly before he clenched it into a fist. Vampires didn't age, and they certainly didn't get sick. They were static points in time. "That's impossible," Marielle said. "You're an original. You don't get sick." And yet, Sebastian unbuttoned his cuff, rolling up his sleeve. His forearm, usually pale marble, was marred by a black, festering rot that seemed to be eating the flesh. It pulsed with a necrotic rhythm. It started a week ago, a necrosis that resists blood healing. My seers told me the cure lies in Blackwood Creek, specifically with the siphon. Marielle stepped back, knocking over a stack of laminated menus. "He knows." "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied, though the denial was flimsy now. "Don't insult me," Sebastian whispered. His speed blurred. One moment he was on the stool. The next, he was on her side of the counter, pinning her against the stainless steel prep station. He didn't touch her, but he was close enough that she could feel the Arctic chill radiating from him. "I can taste the void in you. It smells like ozone and hunger. You are a siphon. You consume magic. If I have a magical rot, you are the only thing that can draw it out." "If I touch you," Marielle said, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and adrenaline, looking up into his desperate eyes, "I could kill you. I don't control it, Sebastian. I don't just take the rot. I peel the skin off souls. I am already dead, little waitress. I am offering you a choice. Cure me, and I leave your town and your secrets buried. Refuse, and I burn this diner to the ground with everyone inside." "You're bluffing," she challenged, staring him down. "You need me." "Am I?" He leaned closer, his fangs extending slightly, sharp and white against his lip. "I have lived 1,000 years without mercy. Do not look for it now." Suddenly, the front door opened again. The bell tolled. A woman stood there. She was drenched in rain, wearing a red trench coat that looked like a wound against the grey night. Her blonde hair was plastered to her skull, and her eyes were entirely black. No whites, no irises. Celestia Lakewood, one of Sebastian's most loyal lieutenants. But she wasn't looking at Sebastian with loyalty. She was holding a serrated silver dagger that dripped with a viscous green poison. "Found you, my liege," Celestia smiled, blood dripping from her teeth. "And you look so weak." Sebastian stiffened, not turning around. "Celestia, this is poor timing." "It's perfect timing," she hissed, stepping into the diner. "The coup has begun, Sebastian. Edwin Crowhurst sends his regards." Marielle realized Sebastian hadn't come to Blackwood Creek just for a cure. He was a refugee. The king had been overthrown, But as Celestia lunged, Mariel saw a second shadow outside the window. Someone watching, not attacking. A man with silver hair and a longbow standing in the rain. Ambrose Greyhaven. The hunters were here too, and they were waiting for the vampires to kill each other first so they could clean up the scraps. The violence was instantaneous and balletic. Celestia cleared the distance to the counter in a blur of red and motion. Sebastian spun, catching her wrist mid-strike. The impact sounded like a cracking whip. The force of it shook the foundations of the diner. "Harrison!" Mariel screamed, snapping the deputy out of his trance. "Get down!" Harrison, confused but reacting to the tone of command, dove under the table just as Celestia, through Sebastian, threw the display case of pies. Cherry filling, glass, and wood exploded outward in a chaotic spray. Philomena fired the shotgun. The blast roared in the confined space, deafening them all. The iron pellets hit Celestia in the shoulder, shredding her coat and flesh. She hissed, stumbling back, but the wound knitted together visibly within seconds, the silver pushing the iron out with a sickening squelch. "Annoying witch," Celestia snarled. She backhanding Philomena across the room with casual cruelty. The old woman hit the wall with a bone-jarring thud and slid down, unconscious. "Phil!" Mariel grabbed a cast-iron skillet from the drying rack, the only weapon she had within reach. Sebastian rose from the debris of the pie case. He looked ragged, the rot on his arm pulsing with black light, spreading up his neck. He was weakened, slower than he should be. The fall had hurt him. "Run, Mariel," Sebastian commanded, his voice strained, blood trickling from his mouth. "I'm not leaving her," Mariel yelled, brandishing the skillet. Celestia laughed, a sound like grinding glass. Oh, how domestic, the king and his pet. She lunged at Sebastian again, driving the silver dagger into his side. Sebastian roared, gripping Celestia's throat. He threw her toward the window, but she twisted in mid-air like a cat, landing on the booth table above Harrison's head. "You're dying, old man," Celestia mocked, wiping slime from her blade. "Edwin has already taken the citadel. Give up." She prepared for a killing blow, crouching to spring, but she made a fatal mistake. She ignored the waitress. Mariel moved. She didn't have vampire speed, but she had desperation. She vaulted the counter, her sneakers squeaking on the wet linoleum, and tackled Celestia from the side just as the vampire leaped. "Get off me, human filth!" Celestia shrieked, driving an elbow into Mariel's ribs. Something cracked, but Mariel didn't let go. Her glove had slipped off in the scuffle. Her bare hand clamped onto the back of Celestia's neck. The effect was immediate. Celestia screamed, a sound that wasn't human. It was the sound of a soul being ripped from its mooring. Veins of blue light shot from Celestia's skin into Mariel's hand. The vampire convulsed, her immortality being siphoned away like water down a drain. Her skin turned grey, then ashy, then crumbled. "What are you?" Celestia gasped, her eyes widening in horror as her body disintegrated. "I'm the clean-up crew," Mariel gritted out. In 3 seconds, Celestia Lakewood was nothing but a pile of dust and a red trench coat on the floor. Mariel fell back, gasping, her veins glowing with stolen power. It felt like liquid fire coursing through her, intoxicating and terrifying. She looked at her hand, horrified. She hadn't fed like that in decades. Sebastian stood up, clutching his bleeding side. He looked at the pile of dust, then at Mariel. There was no fear in his eyes, only a terrifying calculation. "Remarkable," he whispered. I didn't mean to." Mariel stammered, scrambling backward, clutching her glowing hand to her chest. "You are a weapon," Sebastian said, limping toward her. "A god-killer." "Stay back!" Mariel held up her glowing hand. "I can't turn it off." "I can't stay back." Sebastian collapsed to one knee, the black rot on his arm spreading to his jawline. "Because they are coming. More of them. And that hunter outside. Ambrose." The front door swung open. The man with the silver hair and the longbow stepped in, shaking the rain from his coat. Ambrose Greyhaven. He looked at the dust on the floor, then at the wounded vampire king, and finally at the glowing waitress. Well, Ambrose drawled, knocking an arrow tipped with glowing runes. This is a complicated tableau. Ambrose, Sebastian wheezed. Walk away. Can't do that, your majesty. Contract's a contract. Edwin put a high price on your head. Ambrose aimed the bow at Sebastian's heart. Marielle stood between them. The stolen energy in her veins was begging to be released. She felt drunk on it, powerful enough to tear the roof off the building. Put the bow down, Marielle said, her voice echoing with a power that wasn't hers. Her eyes flared with blue light. Ambrose raised an eyebrow. Or what, darling? You gonna hit me with a frying pan? Or I'll do to you what I did to her. She gestured to the pile of dust. Ambrose paused. He looked at the dust pile. He lowered the bow slightly. You're the Thornfoot girl, the anomaly. The council said you were dead. I'm the waitress, she snapped. And I'm closing the diner. Get out. Ambrose smirked, a jagged thing. I'll wait outside. He has to come out eventually. And when he does, I'll take his head. He backed out into the rain, the bell tolling his exit. Silence returned to the diner, broken only by the hum of the neon sign and Philomena's ragged breathing. Sebastian tried to stand, but failed, coughing up black blood. Marielle looked at him. She should let him die. He was a monster. He had threatened to burn the diner. But looking at him now, broken and betrayed, she felt a strange pull, a destiny she had run from for centuries, and she had too much energy in her. She needed to discharge it or she would explode. She knelt beside him. This is going to hurt, she said. Everything hurts, Sebastian replied, his eyes fluttering shut. She removed her other glove. She didn't try to siphon him. She reversed the flow. She placed her hands on his chest and pushed the energy she had stolen from Celestia into him. It wasn't a cure. It was a transfusion. Sebastian's eyes snapped open. They weren't plum anymore. They were bright, burning gold. He gasped, arching his back as the raw power flooded his system, halting the necrosis, but changing him. As the energy left Marielle and entered Sebastian, a psychic link snapped into place between them. It was violent and intrusive. She didn't just heal him, she saw his memory. She saw a burning village from 300 years ago, and she saw herself, standing in the flames, holding the torch. She wasn't just a siphon. In a past life, she was the one who had cursed him. The air in the diner tasted of copper, ozone, and the sharp, stinging scent of shattered magic. The silence that followed the destruction of Celestia was heavy, broken only by the erratic flickering of the neon sign outside, buzzing like a trapped insect against the glass. Sebastian Fernwell stood up. He didn't rise with the groaning effort of a dying man anymore. He unfolded with the terrifying grace of a predator who had just remembered how to hunt. His eyes, now a molten, churning gold, locked onto Marielle. It wasn't a look of gratitude. It was a look of recognition, as if he were seeing a ghost, overlaid on her living features. "What did you do?" he whispered. The voice wasn't just auditory. It resonated in Marielle's skull, a psychic echo that made her teeth ache. It felt like someone striking a tuning fork against her spine. "I saved you," Marielle gasped, clutching the counter for support. The transfer had drained her. She felt hollowed out, a husk of adrenaline and fear, yet paradoxically wired, her nerves singing with the residue of the power she had channeled. "And now you're going to get us out of here before Ambrose decides to stop being polite." Sebastian looked at his hands. The necrosis was gone, replaced by veins that pulsed with a faint, golden luminescence beneath his pale skin. "You didn't just heal me, Marielle. You rewrote me." The void in you didn't just take the rot, it left something behind. Talk later. Run now. Philomena groaned from the floor, clutching her ribs where Celestia had struck her. Her face was pale, lined with pain, but her eyes were sharp flint. Harrison is waking up. If he sees the dust pile that used to be a woman, he's going to ask questions I can't answer. Questions that get good men killed. I cannot leave you, Marielle said, rushing to the old woman's side, her hands hovering, afraid to touch, lest she siphon the little life Philomena had left. You have to, Philomena wheezed, pushing a set of heavy iron keys into Marielle's hand. Take the truck. Go to the old sawmill on Ridge Road. It has wards, old ones, from the logging strikes in the 20s. I'll handle the deputy. I'll tell him it was a gas leak, or bears. He believes in bears. The front window shattered inward. An arrow, wreathed in silver flame, embedded itself in the wall inches from Sebastian's head, singing the wallpaper. Outside, through the driving rain, Ambrose Greyhaven stood illuminated by the high beams of his jeep. Another arrow already knocked, the string drawn to his cheek. "Time's up, Your Majesty," Ambrose called out, his voice cheerful over the storm. "I'd prefer you come out in pieces, but I'm flexible," Sebastian snarled, a sound that was less human and more like a shifting tectonic plate deep underground. He grabbed Marielle's arm. His grip was iron, but the skin was burning hot, a fever heat that defied his undead nature. "We go," Sebastian commanded. He didn't run for the back door. He ran through the back wall. With a shoulder check that defied physics, Sebastian shattered the brick and plaster, creating an exit where there was none. Dust and debris exploded outward into the alleyway, the rain instantly soaking them to the bone. "My truck!" Marielle shouted, pointing to the rusted Ford F-150 parked near the dumpster. "Too slow," Sebastian growled. He scooped her up in his arms, holding her against his chest. The world blurred. It wasn't flight, but it was close. Sebastian moved with a velocity that turned the trees into dark, smearing streaks. The wind whipped Marielle's hair across her face, blinding her. She could feel the power thrumming in his chest, her power. It felt familiar and alien all at once, a golden engine driving a cold machine. She buried her face in his coat, smelling the rain and the ancient dust, trying not to be sick from the motion. They stopped miles away, deep in the density of the Blackwood forest, near a granite cliff edge overlooking the churning river. The roar of the water below matched the roar of blood in Marielle's ears. Sebastian set her down, leaning against a massive Douglas fir, his chest heaving. "The gold," he murmured, looking at his hands again, flexing his fingers as if they didn't belong to him. "It hungers." "What?" Marielle backed away, the psychic link flaring. She could feel his thirst. It wasn't the cold, needle-sharp craving for blood. It was a vast, hollow ache for energy. For her. The bond between them pulsed, a two-way street of desire and danger. "You fed a starving beast, Marielle," Sebastian said, his golden eyes narrowing, the pupils contracting to slits. "And now it wants the rest of the meal." As Sebastian stepped toward her, seemingly predatory, his face contorted. He didn't attack. He collapsed. He fell to his knees, retching, and vomited up a thick, black sludge onto the pine needles. The gold energy wasn't healing him. It was purging him. And in the center of the steaming, vile pool, writhing on the forest floor, was a small, mechanical beetle made of clockwork and bone. A tracking device that had been inside him all along, rejected by his new physiology. The mechanical beetle twitched once, its tiny gear legs spinning in the air, and then died. Sebastian stared at it, wiping the ichor from his mouth with the back of his hand. He looked less like a king and more like a shipwreck survivor. "Edwin!" He spat the name like a curse, wiping the black residue on the wet grass. He didn't just poison me. He bugged me. You were tracked? Marielle asked, shivering in the cold rain. She stepped closer to the beetle, repulsed but fascinated. It was intricate, disturbing technology, bone carved into gears, powered by a drop of quicksilver. Who is Edwin Crowhurst? My advisor. My friend. Or so I thought, Sebastian said, kicking the device into the ravine. It vanished into the white water below. He believes vampires should stop hiding in the shadows of history. He wants to farm humanity, not live alongside it. He calls it the Great Reclaiming. He thinks we are gods who have forgotten how to rule. And let me guess. Marielle crossed her arms, trying to keep her teeth from chattering. You're the benevolent king who just wants peace and rainbows? Sebastian looked at her. The golden light in his eyes had dimmed to a simmer, revealing the exhaustion beneath. I am no saint, Marielle. I have razed cities to keep secrets. I have silenced thousands, so millions could live in ignorance. But I did it to prevent a war we would lose. Humans outnumber us. Technology outpaces us. Edwin wants the war because he believes he cannot lose it. They found shelter in a cave system Philomena had once shown Marielle. Hidden lava tubes beneath the ridge. It was dry, if cold, the air smelling of bat guano and ancient stone. Marielle gathered dry moss and driftwood washed up by high floods. With a hesitant touch of her hand, she reached out not to the wood, but to the wind, howling at the cave mouth. She siphoned the residual kinetic energy from the storm, feeling the friction of the air molecules, and channeled it into the wood. The fire didn't spark. It roared to life instantly, blue-tinged and smokeless, burning with pure force. Sebastian watched her from the other side of the fire, his coat drying on a rock. The psychic bond between them was a low hum, a radio left on static that occasionally picked up a clear signal of emotion. The memory, Sebastian said softly, breaking the silence. When you touched me back at the diner, you saw it too. Marielle stiffened, poking the fire with a stick. The village. Marseille, 1720, Sebastian clarified. The plague year. But it wasn't plague. It was a nest of fledglings. Out of control, Marielle finished for him. She closed her eyes, and the image was there, searingly bright. I saw a woman. She was wearing peasant rags, but she stood like a queen. She was holding a torch. She locked the church doors from the outside. There were people inside screaming. Vampires, Sebastian corrected gently. Feral ones. Madness had taken them. She burned them to save the town. She looked like me. She was you, Sebastian said. The weight of centuries sat on his shoulders, bowing them. Her name was Isabel. She was the first siphon I ever met. I loved her. And she loved me for a time. Marielle looked up, her heart hammering. The emotions from the bond surged. Grief, longing, and a sharp, icy betrayal that wasn't hers. You loved her, Marielle said, her voice trembling. But you killed her. Sebastian didn't deny it. He stared into the blue flames. She became addicted to the power, the fire she wielded. It consumed her empathy. She started hunting not just the feral ones, but the innocent. She wanted to drink the world dry to fill the void inside her. She believed she was purifying the earth. I had to stop her before she burned Paris. Is that why you're here? Marielle stood up, the fire flaring with her anger. To finish the job, to make sure I don't turn into Isabel? Is that why you tracked me down? I came for a cure, Sebastian said, standing to meet her gaze, the cave feeling suddenly very small. But now I wonder if fate has a twisted sense of humor. You saved me with the same power that destroyed her. You are her echo, Marielle, but you are not her. The tension in the cave was palpable. It was a mix of attraction, the magnetic pull of the bond, and the instinctual fear of predator versus predator. Suddenly, Marielle's pocket vibrated. It was the burner phone Philomena insisted she keep. She answered it, her hand shaking. "Mari!" Harrison's voice. He sounded terrified, breathless. "Harrison, are you okay? Where are you?" "I don't know," the deputy whispered. "I woke up on the floor. Phil told me to go home. But there are cars, Mari. Black SUVs. They're blocking the highway. They're setting up a perimeter around the woods. And Mari, they aren't police. They have no faces. They're wearing masks." Before Marielle could warn him to run, a second voice cut into the line. Smooth, cultured, and chilling. "Deputy Valahart is remarkably observant," the voice said. It was Edwin. "Hello, Marielle. Tell the king I have something of his. Not a ledger. Not a crown. I have his daughter." Sebastian ripped the phone from Marielle's hand with enough force to crack the casing. "Edwin! Sebastian!" Edwin's voice purred through the speaker, distorted by the poor signal. "You sound vigorous. The siphons work, I assume? Don't break the phone. It's rude, and I went to great lengths to patch into this frequency. If you touch her," Sebastian growled, his fangs descending, his eyes flashing gold, "I will peel you apart slowly. I will make you envy the damned." "Empty threats from a king without a throne," Edwin replied, sounding bored. "I have Eleanor. She was hiding in Paris, poor thing. Thought she could wait out the coup. She's here, in Blackwood Creek, at the old sawmill. You know, the one with the wards? It seems your witch friend isn't the only one who knows the local real estate. I'm afraid she's having a bit of a hard time with the silver chains." The line went dead. Sebastian crushed the phone in his hand. The plastic shattered into dust and sparking wires. "Eleanor?" Marielle asked softly. "My progeny," Sebastian said, his face a mask of cold fury. "I turned her in 1920. She is the only family I have left. She is innocent in this." "It's a trap," Marielle said. "He knows Philomena sent us to the sawmill. He's baiting you. He wants you to come." "I know." Sebastian buttoned his coat, the aristocratic armor returning. He checked the magazine of a pistol he had taken from the diner, though he likely wouldn't use it. "But I have no choice." "We," Marielle corrected. Sebastian paused, turning to her. "No. This is vampire politics. You are a waitress. You have done enough. I'm a god killer, remember?" Marielle grabbed a heavy piece of oak from the woodpile, hefting it like a club. "And you still have my energy in your veins. If you go alone, you'll burn out. You need a battery. And frankly, I'm tired of running." Sebastian looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time not as a tool or a threat, but as an ally, a dangerous equal. He nodded once. "Stay close." They moved through the forest not as fugitives, but as hunters. Marielle found that the psychic bond allowed them to coordinate without speaking. She knew when he was going to stop to listen. He knew when she needed to rest. They moved in a rhythm that felt centuries old. The sawmill was a rotting, industrial carcass against the night sky. Floodlights cut through the rain, illuminating the perimeter fencing. Armored men stood guard. Thralls, humans mind-controlled to serve vampires, their eyes vacant, their movements stiff. "Front door?" Marielle asked, looking at the heavy iron gates. "Ideally no," Sebastian said, "but subtlety is no longer an option." But before they could strategize, an arrow struck the tree next to Marielle's ear with a thwack. Ambrose Greyhaven stepped out from the shadows of a fern grove. He looked wet, annoyed, and slightly battered. His coat was torn and he was limping. "You two are loud," Ambrose complained, lowering his bow. "I could hear you stomping through the underbrush from a mile away." "Ambrose," Sebastian sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I do not have time for your contract." "Contract's void," Ambrose said, spitting on the ground. "Edwin Crowhurst just declared open season on hunters. Apparently he doesn't like loose ends. His goons tried to run me off the road about 3 miles back. Totaled my jeep. Ambrose pulled a silver hunting knife from his belt and spun it, the blade catching the moonlight. So the enemy of my enemy is my temporary drinking buddy. I help you get the girl. You let me have a 10-minute head start before you try to kill me when this is over. 5 minutes, Sebastian bargained. Deal. The three of them looked at the sawmill, a vampire king, a siphon waitress, and a monster hunter. It was the worst joke Blackwood Creek had ever seen, and the deadliest punchline. How do we get in? Marielle asked. I knock, Sebastian said. He stepped into the light. He didn't hide. He projected. He released the full weight of his aura, amplified by Marielle's golden energy. It was a psychic scream that rolled over the compound. The thralls at the gate fell to their knees, clutching their heads, bleeding from the nose, overwhelmed by the sheer supernatural pressure of a king's presence. Sebastian walked through the open gates, Marielle and Ambrose flanking him. Inside the main cutting room, the saws were silent, but the smell of oil and sawdust was overwhelming. In the center of the room, suspended by silver chains from the high ceiling, was a young woman with violet hair. Eleanor. She was unconscious, her skin burned where the silver touched her. Standing beneath her was a man in a white suit that remained impeccably clean despite the grime of the mill. Edwin Crowhurst. He was handsome in a way that made your skin crawl. Too perfect, too smooth, like a wax figure left in the sun. Welcome, Edwin spread his arms. I must say, Sebastian, the gold look suits you. Very divine. Let her down, Edwin, Sebastian said calmly, though the air around him was vibrating with heat. In a moment, Edwin smiled. He snapped his fingers. From the shadows 12 figures emerged. But they weren't vampires. They were other supernatural beings, werewolves, warlocks, fae, all of them wearing heavy metal collars that pulsed with a sick green light. You see, Marielle, Edwin addressed the waitress, ignoring the king entirely. Sebastian is right about one thing. You are a battery, but he lacks imagination. He just used you to heal himself. I intend to use you to power them. Edwin didn't just want to capture Marielle for a battery. He had prepared the battlefield. He pulled a lever, and the floor beneath Marielle dropped away. It wasn't just a trap door, it was a chute. She fell into a subterranean level, sliding down into darkness, separated from Sebastian and Ambrose. She landed in a glass cell deep underground, and she wasn't alone. In the cell next to her, Harrison the deputy was sitting on a bench, but his eyes were glowing that same sick green. Edwin had turned the town's sweet deputy into a thrall, her first opponent in the gladiator pit. The audience was Edwin, watching from cameras, ready to test his new weapon. The fall didn't kill her, but the landing knocked the wind out of her soul. Marielle hit the hard-packed earth of the pit, rolling instinctively to absorb the impact. Above her, the trapdoor slammed shut, sealing the chute with a mechanical hiss. She was in a glass cylinder, 30 feet wide, illuminated by harsh, sterile strip lighting. The air smelled of ozone and unwashed fear. Across from her, Deputy Harrison Veilheart stood up. His movements were jerky, like a marionette with tangled strings. The green collar around his neck pulsed in time with the veins bulging on his forehead. "Harrison," Marielle whispered, scrambling to her feet. "It's me. Mari." Harrison tilted his head. A low, animalistic growl vibrated in his chest. "Target," he mumbled, the word tasting foreign in his mouth. "Acquire. Dismantle." "No, no, no." Marielle backed up until her spine hit the cold glass. Beyond the transparent wall, she could see other cells, other horrors. A werewolf pacing in madness, a fey creature weeping silently. This wasn't just a pit. It was a battery farm. "Harrison, fight it!" He didn't fight it. He lunged. Harrison had been the high school quarterback, a man of simple strength, but the collar had unlocked the hysterical strength usually reserved for mothers lifting cars off toddlers. He swung a fist that would have shattered her skull if she hadn't ducked. His punch connected with the glass wall behind her, spider-webbing the reinforced surface. Marielle scrambled under his guard, kicking his knee. It was like kicking a concrete pillar. He didn't even flinch. He grabbed her by the back of her diner tunic and hurled her across the cell. She hit the ground hard, tasting blood. Use the power. The bond whispered in her mind. It was Sebastian's voice, faint and static-filled, fighting his own battle flaws above. Drain him, Marielle. It is the only way. I won't killing him, she screamed at the air, at the voice, at the unfairness of the universe. Harrison was on her again, pinning her to the dirt. His hands that had poured her coffee, hands that had helped her fix her porch light, wrapped around her throat. The squeeze was mechanical, emotionless. Marielle's vision began to spot with stars. She clawed at his wrists, but her gloves slipped against his sweat. Gloves. She ripped the glove off her right hand with her teeth. She couldn't drain his life. That would kill him. But the collar was pure, condensed magic. It was a battery. Harrison's thumbs dug into her windpipe. Darkness edged her peripheral vision. With her last ounce of strength, she didn't strike his face. She jammed her bare hand against the glowing green metal of the collar. The reaction was violent. The collar didn't just deactivate, it screamed. Marielle felt a surge of chaotic, sickly energy flood her system. It tasted like battery acid and rot, unlike the clean kinetic energy of nature or the cold void of a vampire. It was artificial magic. She gritted her teeth and pulled. The collar cracked. A shockwave of green light exploded outward, throwing them both apart. Harrison collapsed, gasping for air, his eyes rolling back to reveal the whites, then settling on their natural brown. He coughed, clutching his bruised neck. Mari! Why does my head feel like a hangover from hell? Marielle lay on her back, her veins pulsing with the toxic green energy she had absorbed. She felt sick, volatile. Just a little magical intervention, Harry. She looked at the glass wall where Harrison had punched it earlier. The crack was still there. She stood up, her hand glowing with the unstable green light. Harrison, cover your ears. What? Marielle placed her palm against the glass. I said, cover your ears. She released the collar's energy in a focused beam. The glass didn't shatter. It disintegrated into sand. The vacuum pressure from the tunnel system roared, sucking the sand out. Subtle plot twist. As they stepped out of the cell into the service corridor, Marielle realized the energy hadn't just broken the glass. It had unlocked the other cells. The werewolf, the fae, the warlock. They were all loose, and they were all looking at Marielle not as a savior, but as the alpha. She hadn't just freed them. By absorbing the control frequency of the collar, she accidentally held the command key. They bowed. Upstairs, the sawmill had become a slaughterhouse. Sebastian moved like a stroke of calligraphy in a violently shaken inkwell. He was a blur of shadows and gold, cutting through Edwin's thralls with a sword he had taken from a fallen guard. But for every thrall he incapacitated, 2 more took their place. Ambrose was perched on a catwalk, raining arrows down with lethal precision. "I'm running out of sticks, Your Majesty," he yelled, ducking a fireball thrown by a collared warlock. "Then throw your knife!" Sebastian roared, parrying a blow that would have decapitated him. Edwin Crowhurst stood on the central platform, watching the chaos with a glass of wine in hand. He hadn't joined the fray. He was waiting. The floor shook. A deep, resonant boom echoed from below. What was that? Edwin frowned, looking at his tablet. Sector 4 containment breach. Impossible. Suddenly, the service elevator doors blast open. not sideways but outward, ripped off their hinges. Marielle stepped out. She looked terrifying. Her uniform was torn, her hair wild, and her skin was glowing with a kaleidoscope of energies, the blue of kinetic force, the gold of the king's bond, and the sick green of the collars. Behind her, a werewolf howled. Harrison emerged with a shotgun he'd scavenged, looking pale but determined. "Sorry I'm late," Marielle said, her voice amplified by the magic. "Service is terrible in this place." Sebastian froze, looking at her. "Marielle, you are a supernova." "Get away from him, Edwin," she commanded. The monsters from the pit surged forward, clashing with Edwin's guards, turning the tide of the battle instantly. Edwin didn't look afraid. He looked delighted. He set his wine glass down on the railing. "Finally!" Edwin shouted over the din. "The vessel is full." He slammed his hand down on a console. The entire building groaned. Runes etched into the steel floor of the sawmill flared to life, huge concentric circles that encompassed the entire room. Marielle felt a hook inside her chest. The energy she had collected, all of it, was suddenly being pulled. "You think this is a rebellion?" Edwin laughed, his voice amplified by the speakers. "This is a harvest. I needed a siphon to gather the different frequencies. Vampire, lichen, fae. I couldn't mix them myself. It would kill me. But you are the perfect blender." Gravity shifted. Marielle was lifted off her feet, suspended in the air in the center of the room. The energy was being ripped from her pores, streaming toward a massive machine behind Edwin, a containment unit housing a beating black heart. "The heart of the first," Sebastian whispered, horror dawning on his face. "The progenitor. You're trying to resurrect the first vampire." "Resurrect? No," Edwin sneered. "I'm going to eat it, and with the siphon's filtered power, I will survive the process." Sebastian lunged for the platform, but a barrier of pure force slammed him back. "You should know, Sebastian," Edwin taunted, watching Marielle scream as her life force began to drain. "I didn't just bug you. I engineered you. The village of Marseille? Isabel? I tipped the villagers off. I told Isabel you were the monster. I made sure she would break your heart, so you would become the cold, ruthless king I needed to pave the way for this day." Subtle plot twist. As Marielle hung suspended, dying, she looked at the machine. It was pulling energy out of her. But she was a siphon. Her nature was to take. Edwin assumed she was a passive vessel, a bucket to be poured. He forgot that a bucket could also be a black hole. She locked eyes with Sebastian. "Do not save me," she projected. "Feed me." The room was blindingly bright, a vortex of stolen magic swirling into the machine. Edwin stood before the ancient heart, ready to ascend. Sebastian heard Marielle's command in his mind. "Feed me." It went against every instinct he had. She was already overloaded. Giving her more would turn her into a nuclear bomb. But he looked at her eyes, fierce, terrified, and absolutely certain. He looked at Ambrose. "Shoot me." Ambrose blinked. "Excuse me? Shoot me, with the tether arrow. Connect me to her." Ambrose didn't hesitate. He drew a specialized arrow, one with a conductive silver wire trailing from it. He fired. The arrow pierced Marielle's shoulder. She cried out, but didn't struggle. Sebastian grabbed the trailing wire. He didn't pull her down. He grabbed the barrier of force Edwin had erected. He let the barrier burn his hands, turning his flesh to ash, and he channeled the barrier's energy into the wire. "Drink, Marielle!" Sebastian roared. Marielle didn't fight the drain anymore. She reversed the polarity. She gasped, her back arching. Instead of letting Edwin's machine pull from her, she latched onto the machine. She bit into the energy stream metaphysically. "What are you doing?" Edwin screamed, the console sparking. "Stop! You'll kill us all!" "I'm taking my tip," Marielle yelled. She pulled. She drained the machine. She drained the barrier. She drained the ancient heart. and through the wire she drained Sebastian's gold energy back into herself. She became a singularity. The light in the room bent toward her. The sound died, swallowed by the vacuum of her power. Edwin tried to run, but the vortex caught him. He wasn't pulled by wind, he was pulled by the sheer magical gravity. "No! I am the architect. I am—" Edwin Crowhurst dissolved. He didn't turn to dust. He turned to light, stripped of his physical form, his stolen power ripped away and swallowed by the siphon. Marielle hovered in the air, a goddess of blinding white fire. The energy was too much. She was cracking. Her skin was beginning to fracture like porcelain. "She's going to blow!" Ambrose yelled, shielding his eyes. Sebastian looked at his hands, burned, healing slowly. He looked at the woman who was the reincarnation of his greatest regret and his only hope. "Not this time," Sebastian whispered. He leaped. He didn't have his vampire speed. He had given much of his power to her earlier, and she had taken the rest. He jumped with human strength, fueled by desperation. He caught her ankle. The contact was electric. "Marielle, let it go!" he shouted into the roaring wind of magic. "I can't!" she wept, her voice sounding like a choir of thousands. "It's too much. If I release it, I'll wipe out the state." "Then give it to the earth," Sebastian commanded. "Ground it. Through me. It will kill you. I have lived too long, Marielle. Let me do one good thing." He climbed up, wrapping his arms around her waist. He kissed her. Not a kiss of romance, but a seal. A connection. Marielle sobbed, and she let go. She pushed the torrent of infinite power through her body, into Sebastian, and he drove it down, through his legs, into the iron floor of the mill, deep into the bedrock of the earth. Sebastian screamed as centuries of magic tore through him. He acted as the lightning rod. His immortality, his curse, his power, it all burned away, carried down into the magma of the planet, along with the twisted energy of the machine. The light flared white-hot, and then silence. The silence stretched for a minute. The smoke cleared. In the center of the cratered floor, Marielle lay unconscious. Beside her was Sebastian. He wasn't dust. He was breathing. But when he opened his eyes, they weren't plum, and they weren't gold. They were a soft, human hazel. He reached for his wrist. A pulse. Faint, fluttering, and beautifully mortal. The midnight griddle had a new neon sign. It didn't buzz anymore. Philomena was back at the counter, complaining about the price of flour, though she moved a little slower these days. Harrison sat in his usual booth, reading the paper. He still wore a scarf to hide the faint scarring on his neck, and he didn't like sudden loud noises, but he smiled when Marielle walked by. Marielle placed a slice of cherry pie on the counter. She didn't wear gloves anymore. The bell rang. A man walked in. He wore a flannel shirt and jeans, his hair wind-blown. He looked tired, older. The lines around his eyes were permanent now. He carried a toolbox. "Sink's fixed," Sebastian said, wiping grease from his hands. "It was the U-bend again." "Thanks," Marielle smiled, leaning across the counter. "Coffee? It's on the house." "I have to pay," Sebastian grinned, digging for change. "I'm saving up for a ring." Ambrose, sitting 2 stools down, choked on his milkshake. "Oh, God, please don't propose in a diner. Have some class, Your Majesty." Sebastian ignored him, his hazel eyes locking with Marielle's. There was no static, no psychic bond, no overwhelming hunger. Just the quiet, steady warmth of a choice made every single day. Marielle reached out and took his hand, skin on skin. Nothing broke. Nothing burned. "Just coffee, Sebastian," she whispered. "We have all the time in the world. Thank you for reading Small Town Waitress Hid a Deadly Secret. If you enjoyed Marielle and Sebastian's journey from enemies to soulmates, please like this story and share it with your fellow fantasy lovers. Don't forget to subscribe for more tales of magic, mystery, and romance hidden in the most unexpected places. What did you think of the ending? Let me know in the comments below.